Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. 100th anniversary of Helyg. So, bit of a celebration here. So we acquired this hut in 1925, May 1925 in fact, so exactly 100 years ago. I'm not certain what day it is, but it's close enough to exactly 100 years ago. And we like to claim it was the first climbing hut in the UK. There might be the old people who kind of go, well, it was about the same. Like the Rucksack Club one is about the same era, I think, isn't it? No, so this is the longest extant climbing club. So there we go, we got a claim to fame. So it's a listed building now, as is the garage. So those who know, this is the original bit, the kitchen. And this was built in the vernacular style, as they like to say, in the 1930s. And the garage is worth a look at if you go back up there. Although Kenny's just filled it up with wood, so I'm not quite certain if you can get in it at the moment. But tiniest it's ever been. So the garage was built in, I think, 1927, and basically they decided at the time that they needed someone to park their Rolls Royce. And gone are the days when presidents drove to the club hut in a Rolls Royce, I'm afraid. There's a lot of history to the hut here. I'm not an expert on the history. We've got Ian here somewhere, where Ian's hiding, a lot of knowledge, and we've got Richard Hargreaves, whose father was A.B. Hargreaves, who was involved in the hut from the very early days. And there's a lot of history with the hut, and the very famous climbers used it, so the Everest expedition in the 50s, or the climbers in the 1930s. It's a very fine location, so it's served us well over 100 years and continues to do so. And many thanks to Kenny, who looks after it. We're looking to carry on doing a bit of work. Most of you will have noticed if you come down that we put the new access way in this winter. It makes it significantly safer rather than taking your life in the hands along the A5. So that's a lot better. Hopefully it will all grass over if it ever rains again and didn't just dry. So that should look more in keeping or disappear back into the scenery here. Longer term, well, hopefully we'll tart up the showers and the kitchens and things over the time, but it's our facility to look after. So thank you for coming.
Once we've done this, you can all empty out of the car park, hopefully, guide each other out onto the road, please, and then you're free for the day until this evening. So Plazy Bryn in this evening, and then about 8 o'clock we'll start in the Leicestershire desk. We've got Richard is talking, we've got Ian talking, we've got Kathy Woodhead, Callum Musket, and a team from the Ogwen Valley Mountain Rescue Organisation. So
I think we're supposed to picture the key opening the door, and then we've got some cake, I think. Is that probably right?
Yeah.
Excellent. So once upon a time this would have worked. Right. So
the vice president doing?
it was a vice president.
Have we got any vice?
We got the president.
We've got the president here. Okay, so welcome to Helyg. This doesn't bloody work, does it? Welcome to Helyg. Come and have a look round. Excellent, thank you.
Well, I'm Richard Hargreaves. My father, never dad to us, he was always father. My father was A.B. Hargreaves, Alan Bennett Hargreaves, but always known in the climbing world as A.B., because it's easier that way, and to differentiate him from a very active climber in the Lake District at the same time, A.T. Hargreaves, Albert Hargreaves, who was a publican of the Burnmore Inn in Deskdale. My father came from Blackburn originally, and then became a chartered accountant through working through Liverpool, and he became very, very active with a group of climbers for whom Helyg, when it was built and opened, was an incredibly valuable space, because prior to having a hut like this, people would have to stay in hotels, or possibly get guest house in a bar, in a farm or something like that. And Helyg was the first of the really active mountain club huts, which opened the world for climbing possibilities for people from a much wider range in society. And my father was one of the people who took real advantage of that.
Okay, great.
I'm Andy Kitchen. I joined the club in 2012. I started climbing in 1970, and I suppose I'm really a lifer. I joined the committee in about 3 years ago, and I've done, I edit the journal now. I first visited here with my wife in 2012. We were staying at Yinish, but thought it was a great hut. I've been meaning to come back for years, and last night is the first I've finally managed to stay here. And I've now stayed in every CC hut. I think it's a fantastic venue here. Yeah? I'm currently working on a history of Helyg, based on work that Jeff Milburn did for the 60th anniversary in 1985. And there's a lot of interesting stories about this hut, as I'm sure some of you will know.
People don't do anything dangerous like climbing rocks.
And I work down at Bwthyn Ogwyn and Blaen and Nant's farm, which is the top farm in Nant Francon. So as you go up there, that's where our tool shed, our tree nursery, and it's an in-hand farm at the moment. So it's grazed over the winter period externally, and then we sort of manage land in summer, as well as having to manage, in fact, almost all of the Carneddau and almost all of the Glideri is all National Trust owned, but tenanted out to farmers. So you've got 12 farmers in the valley. I sort of knew I wanted to come and work here. I'm from South Wales originally, and I wanted to be part of this. What's been lovely is learning more about the sort of, well, all the things you don't necessarily know about the landscape. So, who owns what bits, how the landscape's been historically looked after, what came before, and of course, from my perspective, nature as well. So you've got all of these really interesting things that like mishmash around here. So we're currently standing in part of the farm of Isaf, which is the lower of two farms which have the same name. So you've got Gwengwr Uchaf, which is basically the side of Tryfan that you can see going up into Cwm Tryfan. Alright, and it comes all the way, you can vaguely see that buttress of rock sticking up there, there's a fence line there. So that's one farm, and then you've got this one which is Gwengwr Uchaf. Might as well talk about this fantastic clapper bridge here. People familiar with clapper bridges? Yeah? Some of you are. So these are incredibly old bridges which we haven't actually got an exact date for. Okay, and I was looking into it slightly this morning because I didn't really know what exactly the origin was. But what I can see is some people say that they're prehistory, but in general it's sort of believed that they're kind of a medieval type of bridge that was put in. So you've got these giant stone slabs that have been placed down and sort of stacked on stones below, and you'll get these often down in the south, so in Devon and places like this, but also in the uplands just across these rivers. And we've been looking after these and keeping them so that they're safe and like user friendly. So recently we had some contractors in who were filling in all these gaps here. They were sort of sort of just basically pinching the stones in, filling it in, hammering them down to make this a bit more level and to walk over and to keep it going for as long as possible. But I think it's absolutely amazing. Such a part of the area. Okay. And that's what they've yeah, these Scots pines, they fell down, and we did have a fence that was running along here because this needs to be stock-proof and it will need to be again. But what it has brought up is an interesting sort of, you can like get a little insight into as a ranger some of the sort of decision making that we make when we're sort of like looking at areas like this. So these trees, they came, they blew down, they smacked this fence. This fence used to run, and then it would go up and over the old Clapham Bridge here. Now, as we were clearing and sorting that, it gave us a bit of a time, because this is quite a new fence, and this was done by a contractor. And we're looking at the bridge, and it looks far better, in our opinion, without the fences on the side, okay? It looks far, far better. However, we do have duty of cares, and it's quite an interesting blend of where our duty of care, and it's not very black and white. But yeah, what we can do is we can just talk about yeah, the landscape here, different things, and feel free to ask questions. But I'll just start off with obviously the very dilapidated gates that you just walked through, which isn't fit for purpose because this is a bridle way, and you should be able to come here, you know, on a horse and get through that gate. That obviously isn't the case right now, which is you have to dismount, you have to do all of that. And that's why you've got this beautiful, beautiful gate you can see over there. Okay, so through the project, yeah, exactly, correct. Wow, yeah, I've started getting into fences now. I've worked for National Trust. That is a very swish one. So they're not cheap. They're very expensive, and they are, if possible, much better in this sort of environment than wooden gates. You know, wood rots incredibly quickly, and to make it last, you have to treat it with some pretty nasty chemicals. Whereas, you know, what you've got here is very traditional old gate. I'm not, you know, apparently riveted means something. I don't know enough about gates yet, but yeah, this is, you know, produced by a local blacksmith, and he's produced 12 of these gates, which has cost an arm and a leg, but it's totally worth it because we're going to put these in, and they're basically, you know, going to last. Orgov is cave, so that's the cave up there, and Gacht is. It's not. I was a bit confused by this because it's not actually a Welsh word fully, but it's Acht. So Acht is like steep hill. Okay, so that's why if you're going up the Acht, you're going up a steep hill, and they've just put a G there because apparently that is what they do with old names. It's just random letters would come in. So you know, probably just a local dialect thing at the time. Just you know, Acht. Yes, so Gacht. That was not me trying to hide it. Sorry, Gacht. So that's what it means. So it means steep hill to the cave. So and I think it makes perfect sense. I like it. It's, you know, I think you can really see the cave from this angle. And there's lots of little cliffs with some climbs on. The most famous one where on the top you've got Mission Impossible, so you can't see it from here, which is a really crazy like E9. Yeah, on the back. So yeah, really interesting that.
I'm Kenny Atherton, current custodian of Helyg. It's been the privilege of mine to be here for a few years and hopefully a few more to come. In recent times, not a massive amount happened for a lot of years, but then all of a sudden we're improving access, new septic tanks, new regulations on things mean that work has to be done, and generally trying to get the membership to use this hut perhaps more frequently, because we tend to get smaller numbers, more older, so we say slightly less active members who just come for a bit of peace and quiet, somewhere they've been coming for years and love it. It's very different to high pressure, very precious climbing environments of our youth, shall we say, when we're a bit more pushy. So you tend to come here for R&R really, chill out time, and just a different pace of life. Yeah, well, hopefully modernisation won't be too drastic, shall we say. It was listed a few years ago, and hopefully that'll help us preserve a lot of the character, which is very important to a fair number of us in the club. You know, we don't want just an anonymous box that's highly efficient to live in. We like the quirkiness, shall we say, of banging your head when you get to the loo, but it's not for everyone. Programme of works, as far as I'm aware, is just slight improvement and modernisation of things like, you know, the building itself, new toilets, new kitchen. Nothing too drastic, no vast acres of glass atriums or conservatories springing up, and I think the listing will protect us from a lot of, shall we say, possibly unsympathetic stuff anyway. So while a lot of people might see the listing as a hazard and an impediment towards the club developing the hut, some of us consider it might actually help preserve some of the essential character.
Yes, Helyg was actually opened in 1925, and it was the first of. There had been other huts which people used, but they weren't equipped for people to come and use as a base for climbing activities. When I heard about this going to be this 100th anniversary, yes, that would be interesting. I thought, so I offered to come. Would you like me to say anything? I'm sometimes I have no claim to fame as a climber, no great exploits behind me, not like many of the people here today, but I can be wheeled out as quite a useful adjunct when it comes to things like anniversaries and centenaries. And if I've got anything to say, I'm happy to try and say it and tell people and talk about it. So, yes, it's quite an event, this one, and I'm feel quite proud to be, very happy to be part of it.
Yeah, my great-grandfather, William Ernest Corlett, was a walker and a climber. He seems to appear in a lot of the early records, the logbook at Pennygird. He was a prodigious walker, and he was in so many of the accounts of climbs and general activities. I don't think he was a noted climber, but he was just a prodigious walker. But anyway, in his later years, he was no longer out on the hills, but he remained very attached to the area. I know he was involved with the Climbers Club, and when, I think it was in the 30s, and more of the members were arriving here in their cars, they needed a garage, and he said that he would be happy to pay for said garage, and hence they found a spot of land just down the road. I know he built that garage at his own cost, and our sort of family history records that, and I know that he will have done it very, very well because he was a perfectionist. So I'm actually looking forward to going over after this and having a look at it. So it's just a lovely bit of family history for us to know that my great-grandfather purchased the land and built the garage and provided something, which incidentally I've also been told just today at this centenary gathering that I knew the Climbers Club was a listed building, but also the garage is a listed building, as I understand it, because it has the historical significance of being the first, or one of the first, purpose-built garages for automobiles in the area in the country and where, I don't know. But anyway, that's a nice bit of extra family history for us to know that it's great, it's listed. So lovely to be here. My name's Ian Corlett, great-grandson of William Ernest Corlett, and yeah, many, many more centenaries to you.
My name's Ian Smith. I have served the Climbers Club as president and also as a journal editor. And in my retirement, I've become a trustee of the Mountain Heritage Trust. So I'm very aware of the history and heritage of this very special building. It was acquired by the Climbers Club in 1925. We're here for the centenary, and I was also here for the 60th anniversary. So if we just have a quick look round at what's in here. First of all, we've got these glass-fronted cupboards, and these contain objects connected to the club and the history of the club and British climbing. So we've got items in there where CC members were on expeditions to the Himalaya. So there'll be items there from Everest expeditions, and also Kanchenjunga, which was first climbed by two CC members, George Band and Joe Brown. So there's an assortment of crampons, carabiners, an ancient stove, some gloves, all sorts of material. And then on this wall, photographs. In 1953, Sir John Hunt, later Lord Hunt, was training his team for the 1953 expedition, which of course was successful in making the first ascent of Everest, Chomolungma, or Sagarmatha, as it probably should be better known. And these were training weekends. They were based up at the Pennygird Hotel, just up the road a ways, but they used Helyg as a base, and they were trying out oxygen equipment and various other pieces of kit. And the connection with the 1953 expedition is why the hut was listed by CADU, the heritage organisation. So moving on, this is a plaque commemorating various expeditions to Everest. Many prominent CC members were involved, and George Mallory, who perished on the mountain with Sandy Irvine in 1924, he was actually the club president when he passed away. I think he's the only president to actually die in office, but we go right the way back to the 1921 and 22 reconnaissance expeditions, the unsuccessful expedition of 24, where Mallory and Irvine both died, and then a list of various CC members who were on Everest expeditions. So, for example, Mike Westmacott was on the 53 successful expedition, and we go right back to Wakefield in 22. Noel O'Dell, he was the last person to see Mallory and Irvine alive. They were on the ridge of Everest. He looked up, he saw them on the ridge, they disappeared behind some clouds. It was the last sighting ever of Mallory and Irvine. And then if we move on to another cupboard, we've got yet more objects, but various boots. Boots in the 20s and 30s had big iron nails on them that were meant to grip into the rock and the snow and the ice. You can see those very clearly up there. Got more down here. A lot of these boots were made by a company called Robert Lorry, very famous for their boot manufacturer, and also other objects, ephemera from expeditions, plus some early club guidebooks. The Climbers Club actually invented the modern guidebook. The first ever guidebook was produced in 1909, and it was a guidebook to Llywelyn, and there's some other examples of guidebooks there. These are cartoons. These were drawn by a man called French, who was a member of the 1920s, and these were all caricatures of famous climbers of the 20s. And then turning to this wall here, this was the celebration of Helyg in 1985, which was the 60th anniversary of the acquisition of the hut. And these are my photographs of the event. So we've got previous Helyg custodians up there. The magnificent man in the middle is Herbert Carr, who was one of the members that in 1920s acquired this hut for the club. And unfortunately we lost Herbert a couple of years later, but it was lovely to have him here for that. This is a carving of Herbert, commemoration that was made. There's more photos from the event. And these pictures here, this is a gentleman called Ivan Waller, another prominent member, and he created a new climb on Tryfan called Bellevue Bastion, which is now graded very severe. And he went out and he repeated his route, Bellevue Bastion, from the 1920s. He went out and did it again in his 80s with a group of us, which was a wonderful experience. And finally, the dinner menu. We had a Diamond Jubilee dinner at Penigurid, and this was the menu sheet, and it was signed by many of the guests present, many of whom significant Climbers Club members.